On Friday the 22nd of September in 2017, a 29-year-old mother named Keisha Sylvester was last seen leaving her home in Breaux Bridge, Louisiana, when she would mysteriously disappear into the night, never to be seen again. According to her family, she had been spending the evening preparing dinner before she abruptly decided to head out to give her daughter some money. But to everyone's surprise, she would fail to return home, even opting to leave her purse and cell phone behind, as if she had simply vanished into thin air. Just over a week later, an unconfirmed sighting of Keisha was recorded, where an eyewitness claimed to see a woman matching her description climbing into a white truck near her hometown, which would inevitably add yet another layer of mystery to her sudden disappearance. However, despite being given all the evidence they needed, the St. Martin Parish Sheriff's Office were unable to track her whereabouts, and as time passed, the details surrounding her case only grew even more troubling, as Keisha would fail to pick up her last paycheck and even missed her daughter's prom, an event which she had been excitedly planning for. But to make this already harrowing case even more disturbing, it was then revealed by the police that just days after Keisha vanished, her landlord had apparently removed all of her belongings from the trailer she lived in, meaning the authorities had no choice but to rule him out as a suspect due to the lack of remaining evidence. So, with the case eventually turning cold, over 7 years later, the young mother still remains a missing person to this day, understandably leading her family to wonder, what really happened to Keisha Sylvester, and who could be responsible? Keisha Dawn Sylvester was born on the 15th of November in 1987, where she grew up alongside her supportive family in the vibrant community of Breaux Bridge, Louisiana. Known for her warm and caring personality, Keisha was deeply connected to her family, especially her father Clovis and daughter Naya, and she was always described as reliable, loving, and full of life, a person who made sure to prioritize those she cared about. However, as well as this, Keisha also had a natural gift for cooking, which she eventually managed to turn into a career as a chef for the Silver Casino, and from her very first day she worked diligently, showcasing her talent in the kitchen, whilst balancing her other important responsibilities as a mother. But although this dedication was strongly admired by everyone who knew her, it was no secret that Keisha also had her challenges that she preferred to keep to herself. But no matter what she was going through, she always made sure to put on a brave face for her family, and despite these shortcomings, Keisha remained optimistic and focused on the future. One of the key reasons for this was her daughter Naya, who she would see every week on the days she wasn't staying with her father, and towards the end of the year, she was heavily involved in Naya's preparation for prom, which was just days away. However, for reasons which are still unknown to this day, her plans would never come to fruition, and this bright future would inevitably be cut short as she would mysteriously disappear on that fateful day in 2017. On Monday the 18th of September, the 29-year-old woman was picked up from work by her brother Joshua, who would go on to drop her off at the trailer park where she lived alone. At the time, she appeared to be in high spirits as they discussed her plans for Naya's upcoming prom, but eventually Joshua would say his goodbyes before heading to work himself, leaving Keisha alone in the home. Little was known about how the next few days played out, but what we do know is that 4 days later she would travel over to Naya's house, which she shared with her father, to deliver some money in preparation for the big day. But during this exchange, it was revealed that Keisha had to get back home soon, as she was in the middle of cooking and needed to get back to her trailer. However, despite the urgency of the matter, for some strange reason, Keisha would fail to return home, leaving her food unattended and her purse and cell phone in the trailer. It is unknown whether or not the stove was still on at the time, but given the lack of information around any potential fire in the property, it would be safe to assume that she was diligent enough to switch off the stove before leaving that day. But nonetheless, this would be the least of her family's worries, as Naya's prom would eventually arrive, only for the teenager to end up severely disappointed when her mother failed to show up. But keen to get to the bottom of this strange occurrence, Keisha's family then began to relentlessly call her, hoping to find out where she could be. But as the days passed with no contact from Keisha, her family realised that the situation was potentially far more concerning than they had first thought. So with nowhere else to turn, they then decided to call the local police to officially report the 29-year-old mother as missing. On Monday the 2nd of October, the St. Martin Parish Sheriff's Office would receive a call from a devastated family who were desperate to find out what had happened to their loved one. According to them, it was extremely out of character for Keisha to just suddenly up and leave, especially given her plans to see her daughter off for prom. So adamant that something troubling may have occurred, they begged the police for assistance in the matter. In response, the authorities agreed to open up a missing person case and immediately began speaking with her family and friends for potential information that may have led them to a clue. During one of these conversations, it was revealed that Keisha worked at a local casino as a chef, so keen to get to the bottom of this mystery as soon as possible, officers were then sent out to the Silver Casino to speak to her colleagues. However, they would soon be shocked to find out that Keisha had actually been let go from her place of work in the previous weeks. But to add further fuel to the fire, they were also told that she had failed to show up to collect her final paycheck, which understandably concerned the investigating officers to say the least. So, as the troubling evidence began to stack up, the sheriff's office decided to broadcast the case to the public, hoping that somebody would come forward with further evidence or a potential sighting to confirm her safety. And it wouldn't be long before a tip would come in from a member of the public who claimed to have seen a woman matching Keisha's description climbing into the back of a white pickup truck in a nearby neighborhood. However, despite these harrowing details, there is no confirmed evidence that law enforcement ever followed up on the white truck sighting with a thorough investigation. There is no public record indicating that authorities checked surveillance footage in the area where she was reportedly seen, nor is there any information about whether they interviewed witnesses extensively about this sighting. But to make matters even worse, there would still be one more twist in the case, which would turn any serious concern into a deep fear that something incredibly dark may have happened to Keisha. On Monday the 28th of January, around 16 months after Keisha was reported missing, FBI agents decided to visit the property of a man named Randall Rodriguez, who was not only Keisha's ex-employer from her time at Silver Casino, but he was also her landlord. According to the police, a few days after terminating Keisha's employment, Randall then decided to head over to the trailer that he was renting out to her, and after noticing that she was not returning home, he assumed that Keisha had moved away, opting to leave her belongings behind. So, assuming that she would not be returning, he began removing items from the trailer and in doing so, tampering with any potential evidence that could have been left behind. So for this reason, the police viewed Randall as a key suspect that they were keeping their eye on throughout the investigation, but it wasn't until over a year later that they finally gained access to his home to conduct a thorough inspection. Randall went on to tell reporters that the investigators turned his home upside down, looking for any possible links to Keisha. They searched his septic tank, computers, and even took away some clothes for examination. According to Randall, it was a nuisance at the time, but he was relatively unbothered because at the end of the day, he wanted answers about her disappearance just like everyone else. But either way, eventually the authorities cleared him of any wrongdoing, and Keisha's family were moderately satisfied with this conclusion, although they did voice their harsh criticism around the delays involved in the search. After all, for all they knew, Randall could have been spending the previous 16 months cleaning up every shred of evidence that may have led the case back to him. So with little to no evidence remaining, the police were left scratching their heads as to what could have happened to Keisha, once again choosing to lean on the public for help. However, every tip would unfortunately lead to a dead end, meaning that over 7 years later, Keisha Sylvester continues to remain a missing person to this day. Now, unfortunately, as far as the official investigation goes, this is all we know for now. But despite these rather bleak circumstances, Keisha's family are determined to continue their search for answers, as they believe it will only be a matter of time before the truth is finally revealed. However, given that Keisha Sylvester has now been missing for over 7 years, alongside the incredibly concerning details that surround her case, I can't help but feel that the likelihood of her safe return is only growing weaker as time passes. So with that, let's get into some of the potential theories. Now, just before we delve into the various theories surrounding Keisha's disappearance, I wanted to first acknowledge the pain and uncertainty her family have been going through over the past 7 years. Out of respect for them, it's so important that we approach these theories with empathy and sensitivity, as I'm sure this situation still causes them a great deal of pain. So as always, the possibilities I'm about to discuss are purely based on statements made by Keisha's family as well as law enforcement. But regardless of how you feel towards these theories, the fact is they remain nothing more than speculation, at least until some concrete evidence emerges to confirm a definitive scenario. But with that being said, one of the theories that has been strongly considered by both parties is that Keisha may have been met with foul play. After all, her family have been adamant from the start that her sudden disappearance doesn't make sense given her close ties to her loved ones, especially her daughter. They firmly believe she would never leave voluntarily without a word, particularly given her important responsibilities like her daughter's homecoming event and an unclaimed paycheck waiting for her. These factors, combined with the reported sighting of her near a white truck on October 2nd, 2017, have raised serious questions around whether or not she could have been coerced, or worse, abducted. Adding to these suspicions, Keisha's purse and phone remained in her home, and there hasn't been any confirmed activity or communication from her since late September. Another troubling detail is the timing of her landlord removing her belongings from her home soon after her disappearance, as Keisha's family believe this might have destroyed crucial evidence that could have shed light on her fate, regardless of whether or not Randall was involved. But despite these unsettling details, there's been no concrete evidence released by authorities to definitively confirm foul play, and no official suspects have been named so far. This leaves Keisha's family and supporters with more questions than answers, as they continue to push for a more thorough investigation and appeal to the public for any information that might lead to a breakthrough. So despite the contentious evidence that is available, the question unfortunately remains: if foul play is indeed the cause, then who is responsible, and why has this case gone unresolved for so long? Well, some have speculated that Keisha may have been involved in a tragic accident, particularly given the rural and water-adjacent landscape surrounding Breaux Bridge. In this scenario, it's possible that she or her vehicle ended up in a location where neither has been discovered, perhaps in a remote area or even submerged in water. What lends some weight to this theory is the total lack of communication or activity from Keisha after September 22nd in 2017. This abrupt silence could suggest she became incapacitated in some way while she was driving home, and therefore she was unable to reach out for help. The unconfirmed sighting of her near a white truck on October 2nd also raises questions. Could this have been her vehicle, and could she have been travelling somewhere when an accident occurred? But despite these considerations, this theory has significant gaps as well, as no physical evidence has been recovered to support it thus far, and search efforts, though limited, haven't turned up any signs of her car or personal belongings in the surrounding areas. But if this was an accident, why wasn't a more urgent investigation launched earlier, especially after her family raised the alarms? Well, until more evidence emerges, this theory only remains a possibility. But like much of Keisha's case, it leaves us with more questions than answers. So with this in mind, could there be something deeper at play here? Now, although the following theory has been firmly rejected by Keisha's family, authorities have not ruled out the idea that she may have chosen to leave her life behind willingly. This suggestion often arises in cases where there is little evidence of a struggle or forced departure, and for Keisha, her home showed no clear signs of foul play, which some interpret as a potential indicator that her leaving could have been planned. After all, she was recently let go of her job at the Silver Casino and even dropped off some money for her daughter, almost as if she was purposely severing her ties to the community before disappearing and starting fresh elsewhere. But despite these ideas, her family strongly disputes this notion, as Keisha was deeply devoted to her young daughter and had no history of disappearing or neglecting her responsibilities. According to her loved ones, she had strong family bonds and showed no signs of personal or financial issues that may have driven her to walk away from her life. It's also worth noting that there's currently no solid evidence supporting this theory. While a voluntary departure can't be completely ruled out, it seems inconsistent with everything we know about Keisha's character and her circumstances at the time. Ultimately though, I cannot deny that this theory does raise some significant doubts. Is it possible that Keisha could have chosen to leave? Or is this just a way to explain the unexplainable? Well, for her family, the answer is crystal clear, leaving this theory as one of the least likely in their eyes. But if she didn't leave on her own accord, then what else could be responsible for her strange and sudden disappearance? Now, just before I get into this last theory, I feel it must be said that Keisha's family have once again strongly suggested that they do not believe there is any truth to this idea. But nonetheless, I still feel it is important to mention, given that Keisha's case is now over 7 years old, and in that time, new theories have since come to light based on the ever-increasing danger looming in today's society. Keisha's aunt would later be recorded as saying they're getting runaround stories like she's involved in human trafficking, or she was sold to somebody in California. But I know if she was in a situation like that, she would have found a way to contact somebody. Given Keisha's age, appearance and location, which was near some major transit routes, some have suggested that she may have been targeted by traffickers. After all, human trafficking is a prevalent issue in states like Louisiana, where access to highways, ports and secluded rural areas can facilitate these criminal operations. Also, if Keisha was coerced or abducted, it might explain why there's no evidence of voluntary departure. Supporting this theory is the fact that Keisha was reportedly last seen near a white truck. Now, while it's unclear whether she was driving or just a passenger, this sighting could indicate that she was being transported or coerced at the time. Traffickers often use vehicles like trucks to move individuals discreetly, and the lack of digital or physical traces after her disappearance aligns with tactics used to isolate and control their victims. However, this theory, like the others, lacks any concrete evidence, and law enforcement hasn't publicly pursued this angle aggressively, nor have there been any verified sightings of Keisha in a trafficking scenario. So in my personal opinion, which I can only base on the information available online, is that the theory of foul play appears to be the most probable, with Keisha's close family ties, particularly her devotion to her daughter, making voluntary disappearance highly unlikely, and the suspicious timing of her landlord clearing out her home certainly raises questions that remain unanswered. While accidental death and human trafficking are plausible, the lack of evidence supporting these theories means they remain secondary considerations. Plus, the absence of any significant investigation or publicised leads points to a troubling lack of resolution, understandably leaving Keisha's family and the rest of the Breaux Bridge community in a constant state of fear, as they are only left to wonder, what really happened to Keisha Sylvester? Anyway, on that note, I think I'll leave this video here. But as always, if you have any other theories of your own which you think may help explain what really happened to Keisha Sylvester, please leave your ideas in the comments down below and I'll do my best to get back to you. Also, for those of you who want this channel to grow so we can help spread even more awareness for these types of cases, consider becoming a member today for less than $1 a month, as these contributions will help me keep the channel afloat when views are low. And if we get enough members, I hope to one day be able to actually give back to the families themselves to help fund their searches. But either way, until next time, thank you so much for watching, and make sure to check out the playlist on screen now, which covers the many cases of young black women in America who continue to go missing in recent years.